The following program is seen statewide on California Public Television. You know, it's amazing how a small group of people, if they're dedicated and persistent, can make a difference in our world. 100 years ago, just such a group of men and women started something here in California that changed our state forever. And this adventure takes us on a journey to the place where it all started.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old oceans, and I love a rugged shore.
Well, this is an absolutely spectacular view. We are in Santa Cruz County, about 25 miles north of Santa Cruz, in the Santa Cruz Mountains. There's a lot of Santa Cruzing going on, but our state park ranger guides are here to explain to all of us just why this spot, this state park, is so important.
Well, first of all, Hugh, I'd like to welcome you to Big Basin Redwood State Park.
Is that an official welcome?
Official welcome. Nice to have you
Nice
here.
to meet you all.
Glad you're here.
Now, I think the answer to the question as to what is so special about this is found right here on the plaque itself. It says here that this is the first state park in California. So there's got to be a story behind that, Julie.
Indeed there is, and right here is where the second chapter in the story took place. The first chapter has to do with a fellow named Andrew P. Hill, who became incensed when he wasn't allowed to take his photographs of the redwoods on private property. And he decided that there should be a public place where all people could enjoy the redwoods, and brought a bunch of people together, and 9 of them came to this spot. And it was here at Slippery Rock in Big Basin, around a campfire, that they passed around a hat, collected $32, and created the Sempervirens Club to save the redwoods and create a park.
Now, this is a very interesting story. Let's explore that just a little bit more. This happened back in...
That was in 1900, in May, probably on a day like this with the sun shining.
And the idea was this fella Andrew Hill was a famous photographer, and he wanted to come out here and shoot pictures of the redwoods, but he wasn't allowed to because the redwoods were on private land.
They belonged to an individual, and he realized that the whims of an individual could shape the destiny of a forest. And so he decided there should be a place where everybody together could choose what the forest's future could be.
Okay, now, so how did that work out? He chose 9 of his friends, and they just came out here on a camping trip? Did they know where they were coming?
Andrew P. Hill dropped a pebble into the water, and the ripples of that pebble went out in all directions. He was an artist, and he knew some writers, some other artists, some politicians. He got the academics. He spread the word like an evangelist, and people got on board with him. They were inspired. They saw the same things that he saw, where just in their own communities around them, a lot of spaces were being logged, and they took up the cause.
Being logged, because a lot of these beautiful big redwood trees were being felled by the private companies.
That was definitely one of the issues, and if you look at pictures of the area surrounding Big Basin in the early 1900s, the hills would be denuded. So the logging machinery was making its way towards even these most remote places and the largest trees. They got there just in time.
Now, we have some amazing pictures of that were actually taken by Andrew Hill that very first day they came out here in
They came here in 1900.
So we've got actual photographs made right here.
We do, and one of the things that was important at that time is that a lot of people from across the country and all over the world hadn't seen such a thing as a redwood. So the fact that he was a photographer and got images out to the public became really important in getting support and garnering more voices towards saving the trees.
And how hard was it to get a state park started?
Well,
how did the legislature deal with all this? The concept of a state park.
The concept was something they had to sell, and it was something that we had to fight for. And even though they met here in 1900, it wasn't until 1902 that the legislature was finally convinced to vote the money to buy the park and to set aside the park. And eventually 2,500 acres were purchased from the timber company that owned this spot, and that timber company had already logged over 1,000 acres, and the timber company threw that in, so we ended up with 3,900 acres as the nucleus of Big Basin Redwood State Park, and it's now expanded over 18,000 acres. But over time, it's taken a lot of time to get that concept.
And it was probably those photographs that helped convince the politicians to create a park here.
Absolutely. The photographs and the pictures of trees, people didn't understand how big these trees are, how old they were, and how easily they could be wiped out. And so that whole process started right here.
And the name of the group again was?
The Sempervirens Fund.
Sempervirens.
Sempervirens is the name of the redwood tree. Sempervirens means evergreen. And Sequoia sempervirens was given to our coastal redwoods, so it was called the Sempervirens Club at the time, and later its rebirth as Sempervirens Fund, which is still active today as the Sempervirens Fund. It was originally the Sempervirens Club.
Oh, so the organization was named after the technical word for the trees.
That's correct.
I wondered where that name came from.
Yeah, and it meaning lives forever. You know, you hope that the trees live forever, and you hope that that spirit lives forever as well.
Well, we've got a lot to see here. This is not really giving us a very good view of redwoods, though, Bob.
No, actually we have Douglas fir trees, and right behind us an oak tree, and in the process of protecting redwood trees, they also ended up setting aside land that has huckleberries and oaks and other kinds of habitat for lots of different animals. And so while protecting the one species, we've actually protected a whole forest. And it's a wonderful benefit, a side benefit, which we now appreciate even more because we have just islands of habitat left in our state because we're so populated.
Well, we've walked no further than 500 yards from Slippery Rock because, Julie, you wanted to show me this water feature here, which is part of Big Basin.
Sempervirens Falls is one of the really popular view spots of the basin, and people love to come here after a warm day in the redwoods in the hot sun and get the feeling, the sound of the water.
Now, are there a lot of waterfalls in the park?
There's a number of them, and this one's nice because you can get to it really easily by driving and parking. Some of them you have to hike all day to witness.
Now, we haven't really concentrated on the redwoods yet, but redwoods need a lot of water.
They do, and some of it they get from the stream systems that run through here from the precipitation. You were saying that it rains
90 inches. 90 inches a year.
90?
90 inches a year up in the north coast areas, and here at Big Basin 60 inches a year. But at the same time, that 24 miles away in Santa Cruz, it's 15 inches. So 15 inches on the coast, 60 inches up here, 4 times as much rain.
Wow.
The redwoods need it, they love it, but in fact, it's not just the groundwater that they thrive on, but the fog from above as well.
And you're holding some, what did you call it, happy?
Lichen.
Happy lichen here.
It's like in the water itself, and right now it's not dormant, it's not desiccated as you might find it in the summer months, but it's really springy and bouncy and spongy because it's got lots of water inside it.
And green, and where is this hanging from?
Off of many of the trees, but usually not off of the redwoods, interestingly.
And I'm just looking over your shoulder here. We've got a little fern garden going over here too.
There are a lot of varieties of ferns here in Big Basin. This is one of my favorites. It's the 5-fingered fern, and from here you can see the long fingers. If you look up close, it's got a little black bract to it, a little black stem. It's very delicate and beautiful. And ferns in general are delicate, so one of the things that we're protecting by asking people to stay on the walkways is the fragile ferns that live around the waterfall.
Yeah, you've got your area closed to protect natural features and ensure public safety. Do not enter. So people come here and stand like we're standing and look out at this, and when you look out over here into the forest, you really, I mean, it is magical.
It's thick in there, isn't it? With the sunlight coming through, it's really beautiful. And this is one of the deep cut canyons that's really common feature in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Our topography has a lot of canyons and steep slopes.
And this falls again is called?
Sempervirens Falls, which means?
Redwood Falls.
Pretty much, living forever.
Well, this is very exciting. We're standing here at the beginning of the Redwood Trail, and we've run into some visitors from afar.
Yes.
Now, you're from Los Angeles,
I'm
but
from
you
Los
have
Angeles.
brought some guests.
Yes, my cousins from Beijing are visiting us, and I thought they really need to see the redwoods.
Now, have you been here before?
Yes, I've been here since the early 70s.
Really?
And I've come quite often.
So you've kind of fallen in love with this
Oh,
place.
yes, I love this area.
Do they have anything like this in China?
No, not these trees, but national parks, yes.
So they understand the concept of parks and how important they are.
Yes, they do.
Are you getting ready to take the loop here?
Absolutely.
We are too. Nice to meet you. Welcome to California.
I'm glad to meet you too.
Oh, good, good. Well, we're all going to enjoy the redwoods together. You're welcome to kind of tag in and out with us as we go along,
Thank you.
because this is kind of the tour that 90% of the people take when they come to the park.
That's correct. This is the most popular trail, and it's a simple, flat, actually handicap accessible, wheelchair accessible trail, and it covers a lot of the major redwood trees that are famous.
So all of this is within a half-mile radius, even though you have over, what, 80 miles of trails in the park?
That's correct, 80 miles of trails, and sometimes people go off and they first see this, and then they kind of get their appetites started off, and the next thing you know, they're hiking on one of the bigger trails.
Ah, this is kind of a teaser right here.
That's right.
But it has all of the necessary ingredients to really give you an idea of how special this place is.
That's correct.
All right, now what's happening up here? This looks like a circle of trees, Julie.
We think of it as a fairy ring because of the magic that it holds. And part of what it holds in its magic is a story about generations and generations. What we know from the circle here is that at one time a huge redwood lived in the middle, and when she died, we called her the mother tree, she left space for her offspring, actually her clones, to shoot up through the crown roots, and they did so in a shape right around her base, so it turns into a big circle.
Look at this. There is literally a circle of redwoods around where the big giant mother redwood originally stood.
And you see the next generation just starting here, where here we have one of her clones and her grandchildren are making their way up.
Look at this. Here's the big tree and here are the little ones.
That's right.
I've never seen this before.
Yeah, this is a very typical way of redwoods reproduce. They come off of the old root systems and can grow right back up.
Now, oh gosh, now we're beginning to see some redwoods.
These are big trees, and they're complex also. This one I have people look at and tell us how many trees they see, because we see one big base here, and yet
Oh, it splits.
it splits up there, or two have joined together. And because so many of them are clones, they're really closely related. They're grafting, they're splitting. What is a tree, what is an individual, and what is a family here? It's hard to pull it all apart.
You know, it's also hard to see these trees very well because it's hard to photograph them.
Right, we call them photographer's frustration.
Oh, look.
But sometimes you get a view and you can see right up to the tops.
Oh, look at these trees.
They are amazing.
Now, how old are these trees?
Well, we don't know, and that's partly because
You
it's
can't ring them?
You could if you cut it in half, but that would
You
be
don't wanna do
somewhat
that.
intrusive, right? A coring tool is leaves a scar, leaves a little bit of a hole in there, and with some of the very, very wide trees, we can't core directly into the middle. So a lot of that remains a mystery. The biggest trees aren't always the oldest.
Now, where do we go next? This way or this way?
We could go any way we wanted, but if we want to do the redwood loop and see some of those big famous trees, we'll just head off in this direction.
Now, what do you mean big famous trees?
Well, they're only famous because of people making them famous. We get attached to our trees, and that's gone on since those first Victorians came and saw this grove. So they began to name some of the trees.
How old do these trees get to be?
Some of the oldest that we know of are 2,500 years old. So they've seen a lot go on in this area over that period of time.
Boy, isn't this interesting? Now, all of this would have been logged if those early people hadn't decided to set this aside as a state park.
That's pretty likely what would have happened. The technology was increasing and people were able to get to these more remote spots.
Boy, look at these. Now, this has got to be one of the tallest right here.
I haven't climbed it to find out, and actually that is the most effective method of measuring a tree, is getting to the top and dropping a line down, but it does really catch our breath. From here, around the corner, we can also see the tops of some of the really tall trees.
Oh boy, look at this. These are beautiful. How tall are those trees? Are they?
They're over 200 feet tall, I can tell you that. You can also get a feeling for some of the changes that they go through in their life. The top of that one's been knocked off.
Sure, it looks like it's just broken right off at the very top.
Lightning, earthquakes,
Oh
fire.
my gosh, look at this one. This is one that just fell.
They do that sometimes.
But look, boy.
But
Gives you an idea how tall it is.
Yeah.
Gives you an idea how tall it is just because you have to walk along beside it. This trail actually came down just a couple of years ago. The trail used to go in a different direction, and we decided to change the trail so you can just get a feel for how big these trees are.
Now, I know the kids want to walk on top of this thing, don't they?
This is, in some senses, a giant kinesthetic experience. And I also noticed that you can't help but rub your hand along the
Yeah.
bark. And redwood bark has that amazing texture. It's soft, it's spongy, it's fuzzy. It can absorb water, and that helps them to stay moist once again. And it's one of their really important protective features, too.
Boy, this is amazing. Just looking down here and feeling this. It's wet, it's moist.
It's holding on to that water from the recent rains, even in a state of death.
Look at this. It just goes on. And now there, boy, there's a perfect example of one that's just broken off probably hundreds of years ago.
Possibly, because as long as they stay living, they stay together and dead. They don't decompose very quickly. And it turns out that the chemicals, the tannin in their bark and in their wood, really resist the insects. Not only a reason that this forest is so amazing that they live to be so old, but a reason that as carpenters and loggers and lumber users, we like redwood for decks and patios.
Because it lasts a long time.
It sure does. Doesn't get under the weather or get hit by the bugs so hard.
Boy, I don't know whether the camera picks this up or not, but it's like we're walking in the enchanted forest here.
It is enchanting, and I think that's what caught people's imagination and inspired them in the first place. And for the last 100 years, people come here and have that feeling of enchantment, that magical experience.
But when those first visitors came here, interested in making this a state park back in 1900, there were no trails. They were walking through the rough forest.
In their suits and ties with their camera gear, the ladies with their long Victorian skirts and their high heels, and they did it and they loved it.
Boy, let's just stop and stand here for just a minute. I don't know, like I say, this is, just looking up at the light and the clouds coming through this tree. It's one of the most magnificent views in all of California. What is this?
Well, this tree has a redwood burl, and a burl is a growth that comes out of the trunk of the tree and is kind of like a bunion on a foot for some folks, but it's
a
such
big bunion and a big foot.
Huge bunion. It could have been the bunion tree, but they call it the animal tree because people visualize different kinds of animals in this growth, and it's also one of the things that people cut redwood trees down for. This swirly wood is very popular, and it actually is a way of growing redwoods. People would cut a burl off, chop it into little pieces, and it would sprout new trees. So it's kind of something to protect, and it's a very unusual thing, but it is something that the redwoods have, redwood burl.
And look here from the nice, this is in the shade here, but you look out here at the forest, and what you're looking at out here, you really get the size of the tree out there.
Yeah, just the size of the tree. These are the tallest trees in the world, California redwood, Sequoia sempervirens, tallest tree in the world, and it's amazing. People just are flabbergasted at how tall these trees grow. And they do grow over 2,000 years old, and they've been around since our calendar has been in effect, in fact, before that. So a lot of these trees were here as young trees before we had any kind of recorded time in our civilization.
Isn't this beautiful with the clouds and the blue sky and looking up at those trees?
Gorgeous.
You could literally just stand here for an hour and just look. We're coming upon one of the most famous trees in this part of the park.
This is known as the chimney tree, and the really fun part of it is to go inside and look up.
Now, why is it called the chimney tree?
Well, you'll see the answer to that on your own. From the outside, we can see that this has really been affected by fire. If you look at the top, you can see that nevertheless it has bright green branches. It's still alive, and the surprise is right from the middle.
Am I going in by myself, or are you all coming in? Come on in with me, Julie. What do you mean, going in?
You have to go all the way back to here, situate yourself, look straight up.
Oh! It's a chimney.
Indeed it is. So this tree has had fire go right through its cambium layer, through its living layer, through all of its dead wood, the heartwood, and yet it is still alive. It's burned its way all the way up through the center.
That is amazing. It's hollow all the way up. There's graffiti carved in here, which means this has been this way for how many years?
Probably since the early 1900s.
Really?
And what we also see, though, is that it survived that fire and it's healing. Right around the edge, we can see where the cambium layer, the living layer of the tree, and the bark is healing over. And year after year, that open space actually gets a little bit smaller.
I don't see how a tree can survive with the whole inside burned out.
Right, that's quite hard to imagine, except that most of a tree is dead wood, and it's only a tiny layer around the outside, that cambium layer that's living, and this tree had enough of its cambium layer left to be able to send nutrients up and down and to survive.
These are hardy, hardy trees.
Yes, they are. They've lasted thousands of years, and that's one of the ways that they've become so famous, is because they're so old and so big and so hardy. And they can grow back off roots, or they can grow from seed, and there's lots of ways they reproduce, but it's a beautiful forest.
We're inside another tree, and this tree has a wonderful story.
It does, because every place here in Big Basin has cultural history as well as the natural history. And when Andrew P. Hill was taking his photographs, he used this tree as one of his studios.
What do you mean as one of his studios?
He would actually use it as his darkroom, and all his equipment was in there, and he would produce his photos right inside.
He would use the inside of a tree as his darkroom.
Right. He had to be creative because the things were pretty rustic at that time. These are called goose pens very often, and some of the folks who came here over the summer, as the story goes, would store all of their tents and furnishings inside the goose pen and then take it out the next summer when they came back.
See, these are the kind of stories that make all of this so rich and so wonderful.
And especially here at Big Basin, with a history of 100 years as a park, there's a human aspect to almost every piece of our natural history.
Howdy, how you doing?
Oh, fine.
Where are you all from?
Germany, actually.
From Germany?
Yeah.
Is this your dad over here?
That's my dad over
I
there.
saw him trying to photograph that tree.
Yeah.
They're hard to photograph, aren't they? They're just too big.
What is that too big?
Look at that. So have you ever seen anything like this before?
Well, actually, I'm living here now for 2 years, and my parents are visiting me right now.
So you wanted to bring them here.
Around. I show them around because that's a nice park here.
Yeah, well, you don't have anything like this in Germany, do you?
That's true, yeah.
Nothing.
Nine, we have nothing like that.
Yeah. Well, you're standing here in front of this is the tallest tree in the whole forest right here.
Yeah, yes, it's nice to see the large trees.
Yes.
And we are more smaller.
Yes. It puts everything in perspective, doesn't it?
Yes, in the right position.
Yes, in the right position. You know, this is the mother tree, the tallest tree in Big Basin at 329 feet. And Julie, I like what this lady from Germany had to say about putting it all in perspective.
Yes, I think like a lot of visitors, when you come here, your sense of yourself in comparison to this long-lasting, huge and ancient forest really helps you get a grasp on keeping the little things in your life little and the important things important.
And here's the little water fountain over here, the Andrew P. Hill water fountain, and it says here he saved the redwoods. And Andrew Hill saved those redwoods. Thank goodness he did. And today we have this wonderful, wonderful park, the Big Basin Redwood State Park, which is here for all of us to enjoy. Thank you all very much for this wonderful, wonderful tour.
It's our pleasure, and we hope you come back and visit again.
This is California's oldest state park, and it is a wonderful, a fine example of all of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old oceans, and I love a rugged shore.
Hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser. And if you enjoyed our visit to California's oldest state park and would like to see these magnificent redwoods again or share them with your family and friends, this adventure is available on video cassette. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727 and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.